Facciamoci una foto insieme, assolutamente sì. La maglietta gliel'ho prestata io, sì. Ovviamente, la maglietta è la mia,
Guardate noi, guardate noi, guardate noi.
Ditemelo voi. Ditemelo voi.
Again, in fact.
Yeah, again.
Oh, yeah.
I always have a good touch. Get the people. I knew that. Yeah, experience.
Experience.
Allora dietro.
anche più bassa ovviamente, più varia arriva.
Con il rumore fa comunque, però.
È al minimo adesso.
Bene, avremo modo anche dopo di fare le foto. Please, let's take your seats. We can have maybe at the end another short moment for pictures. I want to welcome Matt Dillon, our Life Achievement Award for our 75th Jubilee anniversary. Matt Dillon doesn't need any introduction. His work as an artist, actor, director speaks for itself. And it is my great pleasure to introduce this conversation. It will be hosted by Manlio Gomarasca, and it will be held in English. At the end, there will be an opportunity for some questions from the floor. So enjoy your time, and thank you for being here so numerous. It's great. And Matt, thank you for being with us at the Locarno Film Festival. It means the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Yes, it's great to be here. Thank you. This is incredible. This festival is so vibrant. There's so much energy here, you know. It's so great. Turnout, audiences.
Oh, Matt, you had an incredible career. I mean, you reinvented it.
Well, hopefully it's continuing.
No, of course, of course. In fact, what next? Because you start in the beginning with the character of the young rebel. Then you become a sex symbol in the 18, and then you become an actor for brilliant and surrealistic comedy. And then most recently, you work in a European film, very controversial. So what's next? Because you become a director yourself in the end.
Yeah, well, you know one of the things that I love about my experience in my career has been the unexpected things, the different jobs and opportunities that come up that are not expected. So sometimes people will ask me, what role would you like to do that you haven't done before? And you know, sometimes it's hard to know. It's sort of the thing that comes your way that's unexpected, you know. Sure. That's the stuff that's very exciting. I mean, I always say, and I kind of feel like I don't like surprises, but the unexpected thing is really great.
At one point in your career, you decided to become a director, and what did inspire you in a movie like City of Ghosts?
Yeah, well, first of all, you know, thank you, Jonah, for bringing over the 35 millimeter print of City of Ghosts, which I had. Thank you. Thank you. It was, you know, it was like, it's great to be able to screen that film after all this time. And yesterday we had it presented with a great audience at Matinee in, you know, here. And it was so great to see the 35 millimeter print, yeah. You know. I mean, I have seen the film since then, digitally, but to see it like that was great. And I think, you know, the Locarno Film Festival did that. They brought that print over. So I'm very grateful to that. And, you know, it was a film that I'm enormously proud of, and I have such fond memories of the experience of making the film. And so this was great to be able to present that film here. And, you know, the award itself, the first reaction I had was I was very honored, you know, and then I also thought, well, I'm a bit young, you know, I mean, or at least I think I'm a bit young. And, but then, you know, yesterday they had the reel there, and I was like, well, I have been doing this for a very long time. So, you know, and it was really great. I mean, that piazza last night alone, I don't think there's anything like it, you know, anywhere. So it's wonderful.
And why you decide to play the movie in Cambodia?
Well, you know, I want to go back to the question that you asked before, like, when did I decide to become a director? It was long before I made the film. And, you know, I'd been wanting to direct, really. I remember talking to different filmmakers that I'd worked with about that, you know. I think I even spoke to Francis about it. I mean, I'm just remembering that now. Conversations I had about wanting to direct. Of course, you know, sometimes things happen, but they don't necessarily happen on your own time. They happen when they're meant to happen, and that can be a blessing. And so that film really was sort of, let's just say it was building up. It was, yeah, let's just say it was brewing, as they say. And even, I'd say when I was here, I guess 22 years ago, I guess, when I was here last for this festival, the idea of that film was already, maybe it was a little longer ago, actually, 23 years, 24, or something like that. It was, I remember the ideas were already there, because I remember Gus Van Sant and I were here together, and I talked to him a little bit about, you know, going about the process of how I would, you know, write the script, you know, how we would do that. And, you know, shortly thereafter, I contacted an old friend of mine, a great writer, Barry Gifford, a great novelist and a screenwriter. And I said, listen, I have an idea. And the idea was this film that was set in Southeast Asia. It was an idea about some real people that I knew. One individual was sort of on the lam, you know, this expression, hiding out actually in Thailand at the time, because he was involved with some insurance fraud. And so the idea was, involves, you know, there was a basis of reality and everything, and I wanted to be very specific about it. So I contacted Barry. I said, Barry, I have this idea, and it was a very simple idea about two people, one being this guy who turns up in Cambodia to find his mentor, and what happens as the result of his going there. And I wanted to make an old-fashioned type of yarn, an old-fashioned type of a film, like the films that I love, like a film that I would want to be in, you know. And I looked at, you know, Sam Fuller and Carol Reed, some of my favorite old-time films. And it was sort of that pursuit. I wanted to make a film, you know, that was as much something I would want to do as an actor, but also creating a world that I was interested in. And so when I called Barry, he said, it's about time, you know, and then we went about the process of writing the script. And of course, 7 years later, the film was finished. You know, that's the thing about these projects. Sometimes they take a little while, but often what happens is it's a blessing in disguise. You know, you know, you're wondering if you're ever going to pull it off, you know, and then when it happens, it's better as a result of that, having the time to really to develop the script and to develop the film, you know, to have that time to do so, and also the sense of, you know, kind of being grateful to be making the film. So by the time when we arrived in Cambodia and we were filming, and I had this wonderful cast, it was really an adventure, you know. And you know, there was one guy on the crew because the conditions were challenging because there really was not an infrastructure for filmmaking at that time. I think it's changed now. You know, there is a more robust film world there, but at that time they hadn't really done much in terms of filmmaking, and you know, we were working, it was very rough conditions, and some people would get sick and end up in the hospital with heat stroke. And there was one guy in the crew, you know, and I remember I felt like this guy really resents me because I'm making him work so hard, and here we are. And I came to the set one day and he was lying on the ground with some people around him, and then he had to go to the hospital because he was like, I don't know, heat stroke or something. And I always felt bad. And I remembered feeling like, well, this better be a good film. This better have been worth it. And then I ran into him in New York. He was working on on the set of some movie or television thing. And he told me, you know, I got in the film industry because I wanted to have this exciting experience where it was an adventure. And he said it never happened until I made that film. And that made me feel really good. So that the film actually, you know, changed people's lives if that's, you know, and so that way filmmaking can do that, you know. Yeah.
As an actor, how did you work with the cast? Because it's an amazing cast, the one in City of Ghosts. There is also an European taste. You decide to have someone like Jacques Depardieu, Stella Skarsgård.
Yeah, well, that was just because the reason, it just made sense, you know. Cambodia was a former French colony. And when I had gone there, so one of the reasons that I set the film there was because, yes, of course, I told you about this, you know, American guy who I knew who was a very mysterious con man. He was a con man, you know, and he was a brilliant guy. But, you know, a lot of the other characters were sort of born out of my experience when I had traveled there. You know, people that owned bars, people that were expats there. They were often, you know, French and European. And so, you know, of course, I was delighted that Gerard Depardieu agreed to come on the film. He was so much fun, you know. He was a joy to work with, you know. And I had this very, very talented group of actors and you know, that experienced professionals. But there were also a number of actors who had never done anything before. They were, you know, local people. And the reason was simply because they didn't have a film industry. They didn't have, you know, I remember meeting the local actors that were working in the National Theater, and their style was a very stylized form of acting. It was different than that sort of natural way, the natural way in which I was making the film. And so it made sense to get non-actors, you know. And the key for me in working with these non-actors is I wanted them to feel total freedom so that when they stepped on the set, they understood the character's intentions, and they could just, and I wanted them to not worry about the lines that I had written in the script, but just to be able to be free, to understand what they needed to do. And, you know, and I think part of my background as an actor helped me in working with, you know, the professional actors, of course, were great. And that was, in a way, easier. But then working with these non-professional actors was rewarding in a different way, you know? Yeah.
And talking about professional actor, I was working with James Caan, that recently passed away.
Yeah, of course. Well, this was a very, you know, it was very sad to hear about James Caan, because he was really, I mean, when he agreed to do the film, I was really excited, because I've been a big James Caan fan. I think everybody is. He was a great actor, and when I remember I spoke to him, I said, "Hey, man, I'm so excited that, you know, that you liked the script." And he goes, "Well, listen, I read it, okay?" He said, "Yeah," and I kept reading it, okay? But he was great because he had a great sense of humor, and you know, we had a lot of laughs as well on the film. I mean, he was really funny and a joy to be around. And then I had Stellan Skarsgård as a great actor from Sweden, and he was a total trooper, you know. He was brilliant, he had great ideas, and Natasha McElhone, who was great. And but Jimmy was fun to work with, you know. He was so great to work with, and I think it's a great loss, because he did so much good work. He had such a long, interesting career, you know. And you know, he came to Cambodia, and I told him, I said, "Listen, you're going to be staying in a 5-star hotel," which was true. The first night he was at the Raffles, or maybe the first 2 nights. And then I immediately moved him out to the provinces, where I said, "Listen, there's 2 rooms. One of them's got an air conditioning. The other one's got a window. Which one do you want? I'll take the other." And he was great.
I know that you are a huge fan of Latin music, and you decided to make a documentary about Francisco Ferlo.
Yeah, Francisco Feove, this documentary, El Gran Feove, which is my second film. So City of Ghosts was the first film I did. And then, because I'm a masochist, I decided to make a documentary, which I don't have a lot of experience in. And it really is a very interesting project, because, again, as we were speaking about time and how long things take and et cetera, this film, a lot of the film was footage that I had shot 20 years ago when I went to Mexico City to film this great, innovative showman, a Cuban scat singer named El Gran Feove. He's one of these remarkable characters who was so charismatic, and he walked in the room, and you're never going to forget him. And I went down there with a small film crew to film the making of this record, and he hadn't worked in 20-something years. And, you know, he was busy getting ready to do this record, and I was there we were filming, and, you know, he complained, he thought I was like one of the cable wranglers, somebody working with the crew, you know. And then he found out that I was making this, that I wanted to make a film about him. And I had no background making documentaries. And so, you know, this was interesting. So the more the more time I spent with him, then he started to develop these kind of expectations, because this was a time when Buena Vista Social Club, the record had been out, I think the film had come out, and he was very much an important figure in early Cuban music. I mean, I'm saying mid-century Cuban music, you know. And he had developed a new form of scat singing that was unique to him. And he was part of the feeling movement, which was this movement in Cuban music that happened in the late 40s, was influenced by American jazz, American songbook. And he was an innovator. So a lot of the people in Buena Vista Social Club were his contemporaries. And in some ways, he was, a figure who was before a lot of these people. And so in his mind, I think he started to see that. And this was also at a time when, unfortunately, Napster was happening and file sharing was going on. And so the record that was made was sort of put on hold, because the guy, my friend Joey Altrudo, who had made the record with Feobe, his deal had been, he had a 4-record deal, and the fourth record they canceled, and so he had to put the record on hold, and therefore the film, because I didn't have a background as a documentary filmmaker, it sort of just was on hold. But of course, my love of this music had been ongoing long before I made the film. How do you explain, why you love a certain kind of music? But I always gravitated toward, especially Afro-Cuban music. Maybe more, as much as I love jazz and rock music or ska, reggae, all kinds of music, classical music. That music was the one that got a hold of me. And everybody would say, well, how come you don't have a background, you're not Cuban, you're not Latin American. And I feel like, well, how do you explain that? It's like saying, why do you like vanilla ice cream, You just like it, It's something that you enjoy. I love the music. It's something that, you feel inside. And so I went back into the project, and the timing was, it was an interesting time, and part of that going back into it was like, that's when you do the real work, filming it was amazing, and it was incredible to have all this footage, to watch him, his struggles coming back as a singer, and his triumphs, and all the things he was doing, but then you begin to really dig into the history and his life, and then it becomes really interesting. And then it becomes a human story. And I think if I learned anything in making a documentary is that, what's important, most important, is the emotion, the human story. So, I'm a nerd, okay, when it comes to this music. I want to know everything. I want to know dates. I want to know places. I want to know names. I want to know everything. But, your average person, they can't absorb that. They're not me. But if they can engage emotionally with the characters, then they can absorb that information. And then I think that's why I feel the film it works for me, and I'm very proud of it. So, and I'm excited about, this has been a long, few years here now with COVID, and everything sort of, was kind of on lockdown or something, and now I think I'm excited about bringing it out here, because it's a film, it's not a film that relies on current events. It's music. It's this joy of music and its life, and so I feel like it's timeless and it's universal thematically. Anyway, I'm very excited. You can hear I'm talking about it quite a bit.
Great. You born and grew up near New York City. You never want to move to LA. Strange for an actor, no?
Well, I live in New York. I spend a lot of time in Rome and as well. And but as far as moving to California, it is another home for me in many ways, because I've been in this life that I've had in this film industry. It's the only industry that I've ever known, and I've spent a lot of time there working, and it's my business and my colleagues, and so I spent enough. I have lived out there for such long periods of time, but it was never. I always felt more at home back east, and certainly the inspirations I've had have not, I mean, this is the truth, have not come when I've been living in Los Angeles. I think that, Hollywood, it's very easy for people to say, oh, I hate Hollywood, and they try to get you to say, Hollywood. Hollywood has produced some of the greatest films in history, and it's been I've had great experiences there. But in terms of being inspired, the world inspires me, the world around me. This is an incredible experience that we have out here in life, and to see the world. And I'm curious, that maybe that's my greatest strength more than anything else, is that I'm curious about other things, other places, other people, characters, human nature. So that's what inspires me, and often that's not in Hollywood. You have to bring it there to get the money, so you can make the film. You have to go there, and it's a good place. The infrastructure's there, but the inspiration comes from other places, other sources.
Your first movie is Over the Edge. At the time, do you think you're going to become an actor, or?
In Over the Edge?
Yes.
Yes. Well, Over the Edge was the first film that I made, and I was very young. I was 14, and I was not a professional actor. I didn't go into this. My family was not in show business, and it happened for me, and I believe the reason that I ended up in that film is I was excited about it, and the people, the characters in this film were really interesting. Even if they were kids, they were not they were very real formed people that I could recognize, and that has been always continues to be interesting for me. So from the very beginning, I never even questioned that I would do anything else. I knew that this was going to be my future in making films. So, yeah.
The time of Over the Edge, once you say that someone compared you to Marlon Brando, but you didn't appreciate it.
Well, no, that's very funny. The director, Jonathan Kaplan, was really unique. He came from the school of Roger Corman. Yep. Roger Corman was a guy who made a lot of B movies, but many directors had their beginning of their career.
Also Francis Ford Coppola.
Yeah, Roger Corman was an incubator, for young filmmakers. So many began. Anyway, Jonathan was one of these guys, and he had a very gruff, colorful personality, and he would get. He cast me because he really liked me in the film because I would improvise. I was very wild, and I liked to really do things. So if I had to really break something, I really wanted to break it, And he would say, "All right, Marlon." He would call me Marlon, sarcastically, because I had no background as an actor, and but I always wanted it to be real, like a method actor, And he said to me one day, there was a scene where we're playing juvenile delinquents, and we get arrested, and he said, "Listen, in this scene, maybe you come into the police station and knock over the typewriter, And I said, "Oh yeah, I like that. That's real, And then the writers from the film came running in and said, "No, he can't do that because we need that typewriter to do some rewrites for the scene tomorrow." And then I said, "Oh man," I got disappointed. I was like, "Wait, the director." I said, "Listen, you said that I get to knock over the typewriter." And he goes, "Shut up, Marlon." He goes, "All right, listen." He used to call me Marlon all the time. And he goes, in the scene where we have, where we're going to the party, instead of one girl, I'll give you two girls. You'll walk in, you'll have two girls, a girl on each arm, and I like that. It's like, okay, I like that, great. And then we got there, and we did that scene, and then we were doing the scene. It was jammed, crowded party scene, and the cameraman said, "We can't move the camera around the corner with three people." So the director said to me, he says, "All right, listen, Marlon." He goes, "There's only going to be one girl." And I said, "Man, you're full of shit. You told me that I get 2 girls. He goes, all right, Marlon, you're out of this fucking scene. And he kicked me out of the scene. I said, fuck you. And that was it. That was our relationship. And I went and took a nap, you know. And, but, you know, it was a good experience. It was a great experience. And I will say, I'm making jokes about Jonathan Kaplan. I loved him very much. And he gave me that first opportunity. And in that particular experience of making that film, I'm very fortunate because the principal people that made that film, the director, the writers, my first acting teacher, who was an actress in the film as well, so many of those people had a background where they were what is known as red diaper babies. A red diaper baby, red, you know, is communist, right? So a lot of these people came from a background where their families had been blacklisted from the what was that, House of Un-American Activities, you know, when they had the blacklist in the 50s. And those people also, none of them had given names. So they were people that had a very strong principles about things. And that was very good for me to be exposed to that. And they were also very suspicious of the system. And I always remembered feeling that as well. But I think it was actually a very good experience to be working with those people.
And you become a protagonist immediately. In fact, after you made the trilogy based on the book of Hinton, the first one was Tex, and then you have The Outsiders and
Yes.
The Rumblefish.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned Tex because that was the other one that Francis Coppola did not direct. It was So Essie Hinton was a very popular young people's writer in America, and she wrote The Outsiders, and she wrote Rumblefish. And The Outsiders, everybody would look at this movie or this book, and they would think this is written by some young kid or some guy. And it was written by this 16-year-old girl from Tulsa, Oklahoma. And it's remarkable that she was able to put herself in the mind of these young boys, you know. And, you know, those books affected me as a kid, you know. Everybody read these books, at least in America, and I think in other countries.
You knew it.
Yeah.
You knew the books.
Yeah. And so it was very, you know, I would go back to I would go back to schools and talk to kids about those books and that film and my experience. And these young people had formed their own ideas about who the characters were in these books. And it's really interesting, the verisimilitude, the truth, how powerful that is, you know, that these characters really live. They're not, yes, they're fictional. They don't exist. They were created by this author, but they live inside the readers, you know? Yeah.
And I was working with Francis Ford Coppola in The Outsider first and Rumblefish after.
Well, yeah, those were interesting. It was an interesting time because Rumblefish was not even planned, until we were in the middle of making The Outsiders, I think, and then Francis, while we were in the middle of it, had read Rumblefish and thought this was a great book, and he wanted to make that, and he wanted to do it immediately after The Outsiders, and he approached me. He was terrific because he was so, I don't know how, he had just so much energy and, you know, I mean, I think I took away a lot from that experience of working with Francis. You know, again, like I said, I was curious about directing, and maybe it was around that time that I developed that curiosity. But again, he was like a patriarch, you know, like almost a father figure. You know, I was very young when I just turned 18 when I made The Outsiders. But he would have me watch these different films like Yojimbo, Kurosawa films, and you know, he was really into film history, you know, and he was always referencing, you know, John Ford or, you know, different films. He'd say, okay, this is like, you know, the Informer, you know, with Victor McLaughlin, you know, that IRA film, you know, that John Ford made, or he would reference, just reference all these different films, The Third Man, whatever it was, and he said, but going back to what he said about, he wanted to make Rumblefish, and this was the film that he got excited about, because now he was going to go and make a film that he really wanted to make, which The Outsiders was very epic feeling. So that film was set in the early 60s, but I think that film feels like a much older film, because in many ways it's references early Hollywood Technicolor films. And Rumblefish is much more black and white, like a film noir feeling to it.
Experimental.
Yeah, and more experimental. Yes, exactly. And innovative. He did a lot of. He's very inventive. He's a brilliant man, director.
Yeah, the idea was the golden fish in color, the only things in color.
Yeah, and he used the time lapse. And Steve Burum, the cinematographer, was a great craftsman. Yeah.
And I was working with Dennis Hopper in the movie.
Well, Dennis was great. I mean, what can we say about Dennis Hopper? I mean, he's a real cinematic icon, but somebody who I always think of Dennis because he was somebody that really was a man of the world. He spent a lot of time working in Europe too, and he was a great photographer. He was an art collector. He was all of those things. But most importantly was his career that spanned so many years and so many periods of filmmaking. Sure. So, I mean, he was in Rebel Without a Cause with James Dean and with, all these people. He told me once, he said that James Dean was the most talented person he ever met. He said that. He loved James Dean. But Dennis was fascinating because you could see him in always interesting in all these different periods of his career. And he came, when we were making The Outsiders, he came to Tulsa, Oklahoma. And of course it made perfect sense that he would be in Rumblefish. And I think it almost felt like it was destined to be. And he and Francis had a very interesting relationship. It was not. It could be, contentious. Let's just say at times. Dennis could be very stubborn. And Francis sticks to his guns as well. So sometimes it was like that. And the way that Francis sometimes will get back at you is make you do lots of takes, So we like doing 50 takes of the same scene. And it's basically, he's going to break. In this case, he was going to break Dennis. He was going to break Dennis down. But he was great. He was somebody that was, and we remained friends, Unfortunately, he's another one that we lost way too early. Yes. But I mean, his legacy remains. There's no other Dennis Hopper, and there never will be.
For sure. Another important movie for your career, I think, is Drugstore Cowboy. You won an Independent Spirits Award for the movie, and I was working for Gus Van Sant. It was his second feature, in fact. And with Drugstore Cowboy, he became finally a director that was under the spotlight of Hollywood.
Yeah, well. I'd seen his previous film, Mala Noche. Thought it was really great, beautifully made film. The talent was there, And what could I say? I mean, from the beginning of making that film, I thought, wow, this is really different. I've never made a film like this. The way he worked, and very low key approach, but at the same time, very distinctive. He was very secure in what he would do as a filmmaker. And he really loves the input of everybody involved. So he encouraged us to do a lot of improvisation, and we did a lot of rehearsal, because in this film, it's really, in many ways, yeah, it's a film about drugs, about addiction, about a lot of things, but it's a road movie in a way about these criminals that, you know, that are going around robbing drugstores, and there's relationships between the two couples. And to get that dynamic between us actors, we did a lot of work together leading up to the film, where we spent a lot of time improvising in character to develop the dynamics of the relationship. And it really helped. And that's what I'd say really was a great experience working with him, because it's the kind of film that you hope to make because you forget that it's a job and you're just doing something that's fulfilling, you know.
And talking about improvisation and freedom on the set, I was working with Lars von Trier in the house that Jack's built.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, great filmmaker, and he's an innovative filmmaker.
Yes, he is.
And I want to say something, that he's a very honorable person. And I don't think people think of him. They think of him as dark and crazy or whatever, but he was very true to his word. And that's something that's, you know, we developed a very good relationship of trust, because to work on a film like that, you have to have trust in the filmmaker. And he would always say to me, because that movie was crazy, it was dark, I didn't always understand what he was doing. And he'd say to me, well, you can just blame Lars. And I said, don't worry, I will. And I did. But, you know, he had a great sense of humor, too. And, you know, I want to say that the experience, whatever the content of the film was dark, but the experience of making the film was really great, really creative. The atmosphere was creative and joyful. We really were having fun making this crazy film, and we were definitely. I felt like we were on a tightrope. We were out on a limb, or to use these cliches, but we were doing something that was sort of about evil, a meditation on this. It's something we know very little about, right? And so it was very interesting to go there and to make this kind of film. But in terms of the process of working, what I really enjoyed was the freedom that he allows, that he fosters on the set. Freedom. And part of that is because there is trust, but I am permitted, the actors are permitted to forget any of their professional ideas and say, let's just see what happens. Let's see. It wasn't so much that we were improvising dialogue. There was some of that, but mostly it was about, you know, let's shoot the rehearsal. We didn't rehearse ever. And if you didn't remember or know what you were doing next, that was okay, because the potential for failure was a part of the process. And that is very liberating.
Wow. Another great character you made was the Bukowski character in Factotum. How did you work to the character, to the book and everything?
Well, when I was much younger, I read all of Bukowski's short stories and the novels I read, and somebody's raising up a Bukowski book there. Well, you know, and I loved these books, but I never thought of, this is one of those unexpected things I was talking about, and I never thought that I would play a Chinosky character. And so when Jim Stark approached me, the producer, he said, well, Bent Hamer, this very talented Norwegian director, wants you to do this. I was intrigued, but I just didn't think that I was that I was right for it, because my experience with Bukowski was when I was younger. So he was always somebody that was older to me, and he said, "No, you're the right age for Factotum," because that's how old he was. And then I was concerned, well, I don't really look like him, and I don't really. And then I spoke to Hank's widow, Linda, and she said, "No, you would be a great Hank." In fact, I didn't know exactly how to take that, although I really loved his books, and I think history will be really kind. I think he gets better all the time because the truth, because he goes there. And so I did it. I was fortunate that there was a lot of material, so I could study him as the person. And you know, I said to to his widow, Linda, I said, well, as long as I'm not doing because Chinaski isn't quite Bukowski. And she goes, no, he's everything. He is exactly, that is Hank, and that's who it is. So, you know, I said, I couldn't hide from that, you know. I mean, physically we're very different, but there were things that we did behaviorally that were very honest to it. And, you know, Linda's feelings were that he was not so much into material things. She said he liked his, he was all about the hair. It was all about his hair, you know. He was into his hair, but he wasn't somebody that was into beauty in that way or into vanity, you know. It wasn't something that was interesting to him. So that was an interesting aesthetic thing, you know, that this was not a consideration in this character. And yet we didn't do any, you know, prosthetics. We didn't try to make him look exactly like him. But it was a great experience. Again, it was one of those jobs where I felt very much that it was like not like a job, you know. Yeah.
Oh, your career is so intense, so long. There are so many questions I would like to make, but we are, I think, running out of time. And yes, I would like to let the people make questions.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Max von Sydow, I did work.
Aspetta il microfono.
Yeah, the question was that she
So
was.
you was young, you started in...
Yeah, I worked with Max von Sydow,
Yeah.
who was
What kind of experience was for you?
What's that?
What kind of experience as an actor was for you, for working with...
Well, as an actor, he's just a great actor.
I know.
I mean, a great actor. I think an actor who, if you can say that, he was underrated in a way, at how great an actor he was. But he was such a humble person. And I remember I was on the set with him, and, you know, I don't know, I heard some story about this film, the greatest story ever told. It was a biblical epic. And for some reason, I was under the impression that it was directed by Cecil B. DeMille. And I was telling this story that I had heard about John Wayne, who was in the film. And you know, Cecil B. DeMille. And then he corrected me and said, I was George Stevens. And I said, oh, I don't know if that's, are you sure about that, Max? And I was sort of questioning whether it was George Stevens or not. And he goes, it was George Stevens. And then, embarrassingly, I found out later, of course, he played the lead role in the film, The Greatest Story Ever Told. He played Jesus, for God's sake, in this film.
Yeah.
And I'm arguing with him about who the director was.
Yeah. It was a nice person also.
He was really a gentle,
yeah, gentle.
really gentle. I think maybe that's one of the nicest qualities of von Sydow as an actor, was that empathy always was there, no matter what kind of a character he played.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Is there somebody else?
Sì, poi c'è la ragazza là che aveva già alzato la mano, fai prima tu.
I grew up with The Outsiders, and how you think The Outsider affected the young generations? I grew up with it, and it had a good impact on me. It helped me grow up. What do you think the Outsider?
It's a remarkable thing, you know, The Outsiders. Like, it never, it seems to be like this perennial thing that continues to exist. And today, kids are still reading the book. The film was made, and often when a film is made, everybody forgets about the book. But this was the opposite. And I believe that it has something to do with young people recognizing other young people struggling with their lives and trying to live independently. And that's very powerful.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your time. So my question is, cinema originated as an entertainment. Many years after the release of Fellini's La Dolce Vita, people start calling it as an art. And what movie makes you realize that the cinema is the real art? Thank you.
Well, you know, you can look at Buster Keaton films and you know it's as great as anything. I mean, truly, you look at Buster Keaton and it's all there.
Yesterday they you the Lifetime Achievement Award for your career.
Il microfono, aspetta un secondo che ti
Okay,
porta il microfono.
I can, you know, yeah.
Dov'è la domanda? Sorry, yesterday they give you the Lifetime Achievement Award for your career and your experience and your life. And I would like to ask you, what does freedom means for you? Thank you.
Freedom. Well, I'll keep it in, you know, specific to that of the work. You know, I was speaking about an experience I had working with Von Trier, you know, this freedom. And I felt that as a director, that I wanted actors to have freedom. Freedom, I think, is, you know, breaking the rules, you know, a little bit. I mean, I don't mean, you know, like, sometimes the rules are meant to be broken, you know, like, that's what they're there for. But I don't think they should be broken on principle. That I think the reason to break the rules is because they need to be broken. The ideas of, like, in cinema, for example, doing things that are different and breaking away from whatever anybody's idea of structure is, or, you know, cinema, or I think these are really important things, you know. And so, you know, I think, listen, there needs to be, to have freedom, you also have to have, it needs a context, and you need some structure, some discipline in there. So, for example, you know, in improvisation, there are certain rules. It's not that you just say whatever you want and the other person says whatever they want. You have to be, there has to be some cohesiveness. You have to work together in this, you know. And so, you know, freedom is also, you know, you need to have cooperation with freedom, you know, especially in filmmaking, you know.
Good afternoon, Mr. Dillon. I'm an actor, and as an actor, I saw many of your great performances in great movies.
Thank you.
One of my favorite is Wild Things. I would like to ask you,
Wow,
you're
that's a
laughing at the
funny
movie.
one.
You still remember doing it?
Yeah.
My question is, what do you remember still about the movie that you made many years ago? And there was a great inspiration for me as a teenager actor at the time.
Uh-huh. Well, you know, listen, I mean, I made a lot of films, you know, and that film, you know, I really love the director.
John McNaughton.
John McNaughton, I loved him. He was great, and I really enjoyed working with him. And there wasn't a real, listen, it was a great cast, you know, I will say. The film was very, there was an element of camp to the film, you know. It was funny in some ways. And I think that's the way you can enjoy that film, you know. And, but, you know, it was Bill Murray, you know, had a character that was great in this film. And there was an atmosphere, and I think that that's what John McNaughton brought to the film, you know. Before that, it was a straight ahead, kind of boilerplate, as they say, thriller, and then he brought this atmosphere to the film.
I have a question. You said yesterday and also today it's a bit early for the Lifetime Award. Is there also a fear that the career or the acting is not going on, or how it is going on?
Oh. I was looking for the person who was asking the question. I couldn't find him. I'm sorry. What was the question? Could you repeat it, please? I'm sorry, because I was looking for you and I couldn't. Yeah.
I was asking because you mentioned it's a bit early to receive a Lifetime Award. So is it a feeling
Well,
of...
when you're 23 years old, it is early, right?
Yeah.
I'm just joking. Obviously, it's a bad joke. Everyone knows I'm not 23. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So how is it going in the future about your career? Are there some worries how it's going on, or pressure, or?
You know what? It's nice to receive it when you can still kind of enjoy it, you know? Sometimes you see these awards go to people and they're a little bit older. And maybe that's when I have been doing this for a long time. I was saying last night, I mean, I started in 1978. I was 14 years old. So there are a lot of actors that started long before me who are worthy of an achievement award, believe me. But I do remember on the first film I made, I met a guy who worked on The Wizard of Oz, and he was working on the film. And there were probably others that worked on that film. And I thought, to me at that time, that was unimaginable, that I would be working with somebody who was in the art department on The Wizard of Oz, you know? So there, you know, I've been around for a little while. I remember the Nicodel in Hollywood, you know, Hollywood back in those days. And yeah, you know, so first of all, I'm very honored to win this prize, because this is a great festival. This is one of the best international film festivals. I mean, it's really is an honor, and so I'm very happy to receive it. And I have been doing it for a long time, so it's not a lifetime, because I have, hopefully, knock wood, got a lot of life to live.
Ancora due domande.
Mr. Dillon, we talked a lot about the past. What about the future? The future of the film industry with Amazon and Netflix, and so I think the quality of film is decreasing with all these kind of short track films. What is your view on the future of the film industry? Is it coming back?
I think things are changing. I think that, you know, and things change so quickly today. You know, it's like, I feel like I made City of Ghosts yesterday, and now to say, oh, we brought a 35 millimeter print to Locarno, and this is sort of like another time, you know. I think the business is changing rapidly, but I don't, you know, I'm a creative person. I know that's where my strength is. I'm not so good at logistics and organization, but and I feel like from that perspective, there's still good things happening. You know, good things are happening in long form television, better than they were. So that is improved, I think, considerably. And there's more opportunities in many ways. It is changing, and one of the things that saddens me is that there's less and less of the big screen, you know, and that, I miss that. There's a certain magic that happens in the theater, in the dark, when you're watching a film on the big screen. It's it's a social event as well. And, you know, I miss that. Now, I will contextualize that by saying if we asked everybody here, you know, what their favorite film was, they might not remember if they saw it on television or if they saw it in the theater, you know? So the content of whatever the thing is can be enjoyed in different, you can enjoy, I mean, I saw a lot of films that affected me on my mother's black and white TV set, you know, when I was a kid, so.
Allora, l'ultima domanda, la signora lì che aveva la mano alzata da un bel po', grazie.
Talking about music again, Singles by Cameron Crowe is a picture of a generation. Thinking about that movie, what are you feeling today that many of the protagonists of grunge scene are disappeared, are dead?
You know, when we made the question about Singles, when we made that film, none of those people, none of those bands, and Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and these groups were not, they weren't famous yet. They were all, they were ready. They were right there, ready to break. And they after the film, that is when they exploded. And no, it's sad to me that, you know, Chris Cornell and Lane from Alice in Chains. We lost some very good, I really like these guys. I really talented people, you know, and that's always heartbreaking. I mean, Kurt Cobain was a brilliant songwriter. Also, his favorite film was Over the Edge, which I was very happy to hear that, you know. So that affected him, but yeah, it's very sad, you know, I think. But, you know, we have the music lives on with these people, so life is precious, you know.
Thank you Matt Dillon, grazie a tutti voi per essere venuti. Stasera alle 5 c'è la proiezione di Drugstore Cowboy.
Not yet. That was last time. Yeah. I had bad shoes. I have now.
Non appoggiatevi
sul tavolo perché il tavolo non è così stabile.
Let's not break the table, guys, huh? Okay.
Scusa.
Maz, non puoi andare via dopo 40 anni che ti seguo. Però avevo 14 anni, forse mi capirà.
Thank you very much. It was a great talk.
Hai detto che mi sfermare. Ti prego, ti prego. Grazie mille. Please.